be quite good.
Right there?
I want to see.
Do you want to go down there? So yes? You do? Let's go there. There's traffic.
Is it Gustav?
Sorry? No. Oh, it's a bike. Hi everyone, welcome back to the vlog. We're in Paris, walking past the Eiffel Tower towards the boats to take a boat ride down the Seine through the city centre. The Eiffel Tower, as everyone knows, was built in 1889. Actually, they started building in 1887 for a universal exhibition in those days. Lots of cities used to compete with each other with their universal exhibitions, where they'd have pavilions from all over the world displaying their latest finds in science, technology, engineering, and art and culture. And this was for the Paris one in 1889, and it was originally supposed to stand for 20 years. Eiffel was a genius architect working with iron and steel, and this was going to be one of his most elaborate and successful works of art and of engineering. And in the end, of course, it stayed. They never took it down, and it's become the symbol of Paris. Although Paris is much more than the Eiffel Tower, despite what some people may think. The Eiffel Tower is great to come and see at night too, because they have these flashing illuminations on the hour, every hour.
Yeah. Hallo. Gaan we weg hier? Beet, beet.
Most years the Eiffel Towers were the best place to see the fireworks displays on National Day, 14th of July, which celebrates or commemorates the French Revolution. It's a bit odd because the fireworks are shot from across the river, but the only space for the general public to watch is behind the Eiffel Tower. So you've got this huge structure getting in between the public and the display itself, but it's still an extraordinary spectacle and well worth doing. although beware of the crowds. It used to be easy just to jump down onto the riverbank and see the displays from below, but now security is really tight, so much more difficult.
You've got all day to do. Come on.
Boat trips down the river are one of the best ways of seeing Paris, but be careful because not all boat trips are the same. Some of the larger boats have got great views, but the day we went, the river was flowing quite high because of the spring rains, and as a result, the larger boats were unable to go through the smaller bridges down the other end. Of course, they didn't warn us about this when we bought our tickets, so we ended up with a curtailed tour of Paris, and the smaller boats were able to go down all the way to the east past the Latin Quarter, whereas we had to turn back before we got there. Other than that, it's the best way to see Paris is to go down the Seine, either walking or on a boat, because you get a view of many of the city's most impressive monuments from a vantage point that really sets them off. You can do dinner cruises. The food is generally not anything to write home about, so unless you really want to be having a meal and watching the sights, I wouldn't recommend them.
We can stay for the next one.
No.
Why?
You're on your own.
All of them is for one point?
Yeah.
So no chance. Because one of them...
Beware, of course, of affluence.
That's a big word.
Paris is, I think, the world's most visited city by tourists, surprisingly. France certainly is one of the top-ranking destinations for tourism, and Paris is one that is the top or very close to the top in terms of numbers of visitors. And this means that although the infrastructure is quite well established and they're used to having crowds, nevertheless the queues can be horrendous. We went on a March day that wasn't particularly warm, relatively early in the day, sort of mid-morning, and despite that the queues were already quite long.
Okay.
On a sunny weekend in late spring or summer, it's just awful to have to line up for hours. So be careful about the queues and try and get there early if you
45
can.
minutes for the next one.
Is it finished?
Yeah, the block is not finished.
Oh, look at the rest of queue anyway.
Yeah, we will. 45 minutes to stand.
Probably have a best seat again. They can this. Because someone is going that side, right?
They're groups. There are people outside, but not upstairs.
Unlike many cities in Europe today, Paris still boasts quite a few residents in the city centre, and many of the buildings we go past are just ordinary apartment blocks. Of course, they're now €1 million apartments, but they are residences, and not all of them have been converted into offices or used as museums. That said, we will go by. When you go down the river, you go by quite a few monuments and museums and other sites. There are houseboats in Paris, people actually living in a boat on the Seine, but not very many of them. It costs a lot of money, and it's quite a high rental just to be able to moor there and have access to water and electricity. So there are very few and quite a waiting list. On the right bank, so the right bank is viewed from the point of view of the flow of the river, and the river comes into the town on the east and comes out on the west. And the right bank is the north bank, and the left bank, famously known as the Latin Quarter, is the south bank. And what we're viewing here is the right bank, and that's the Modern Art Museum. Typical architecture from the 1920s, I believe. You like modern art or not, it's definitely worth a visit. Soon after the Modern Art Museum, we come up to the Pont de l'Alma. There's lots of bridges across Paris. What's interesting, they each have different lampposts and each have a different architectural style, and they're all works of art in themselves, so well worth a close look. Still viewing the right bank, and difficult to see here, but in the right of the picture, below two trees, there's a golden flame. That flame is the replica of the flame of the Statue of Liberty's torch. It was a gift back from the United States to Paris, I think on the anniversary of American independence, 200th anniversary, but it's become a site of commemoration because it sits above the bridge, the tunnel in which Princess Diana's car crashed, in which she was killed. Moving on, we go past the Zouave, a North African soldier who fought for the French and is used as a benchmark for when the river floods. You know that if the water has reached his sandals, that it's getting dicey. Moving on down the right bank, again look at each bridge has got different architectural style and lamppost and statuary, and going past more steel and glass edifices, which were the Grand Palais and the Petit Palais. The Grand Palais is currently closed. It's a permanent place for exhibitions, and they've replaced it with a temporary museum which has a horrific look of being permanent, bang in the middle of the Champ de Mars, which are the gardens behind the Eiffel Tower. Look at the statuary here, gold leaf, continually refreshed. I think Paris is going through a makeover because of the Olympics that are coming this summer. Okay, we're now coming up to the Place de la Concorde. You can just see the obelisk through the trees. Concorde is famously where all the guillotines took place during the French Revolution, and it's now become a huge space used for national celebrations, including the 14th of July military parade. And it's flanked by the Crillon Hotel, the Automobile Club, and what used to be the Naval Ministry and has been converted into a museum for, believe it or not, the furniture and art owned by the royal family, I believe. Well, I haven't actually been to that one yet, but it's certainly worth a peek. And then coming out of Concorde, following the river, are the gardens leading up to the Louvre, the Tuileries Gardens. There's the obelisk there. And past the bridge, the Tuileries Gardens start, and the first building is the Orangerie, which houses, I believe, the Impressionists or Monet, or at least it used to until maybe they've been moved to the Musée d'Orsay, I'm not sure. But a very classical building of grace, great grace and proportion. The gardens are very French, symmetrically organized, and dotted with statuary and other bits and pieces. A nice walk, but can get very crowded on a sunny Sunday. Tuileries ends when the Louvre starts, and the Louvre, one of the world's biggest museums for art and history, also worth not one but several visits because there's too much to take in one go. Again, watch out for crowds, but really there's some spectacular and extraordinary and unique works in the Louvre, so it's a must-see. Used to be a royal palace, got taken over by the state, obviously. They converted half of it into a museum and the other half into a Ministry of Finance, which was a bit of a waste of space. And they realised this after a while and rebuilt the Ministry of Finance a bit further upriver. Itself now a building of some architectural merit, but more modern. And that whole wing has now been added to the museum, which makes it twice the size it used to be. And with the steel and glass pyramid of I.M. Pei bang in the middle. It caused a lot of controversy at the time when it was built, but it actually looks really good and has now blended into the traditional scenery. There's the Louvre starting there. It was a royal palace, as I say. Just imagine the proportions of the royal palace. Just huge. go. Look at the size of that. We're not even halfway down the first wing. There's at least 3 times as much, as well as inner courtyards. Sometimes these are used for Paris Fashion Week. If you're lucky enough to get in, you can see some extraordinary catwalks displays here. And we're coming up, so you can see the river is really high, or I think you can guess the river is higher than it might be. And from here on, the bridge has become just too small for the size of our boat. There, we're continuing on the Louvre, the second half of the Louvre, before we get to the Cour Carrée, which is the end bit. And that footbridge across the Louvre is where people started putting padlocks onto the railings to commemorate the couple's romance, I suppose. And there were so many padlocks after a couple of years that the whole bridge threatened to collapse, and they had to rip off the railings and replace them with railings and glass that wouldn't allow padlocks to be attached, because the sheer weight of the probably tens of thousands of padlocks threatened to bring it down. So now people still use railings all over the place to lock padlocks. Goodness knows why. What on earth they think they're going to add to their romance as a result of that, except perhaps make the padlock makers happier. So be aware that if there's too many padlocks, you can actually damage the structure, because these are heavy things. There's the Louvre in its entirety. It is just enormous, and that's just one half of it, because there's more of the same on the other side. That dome with the cupola is the Institut de France, which is used, I think, originally to celebrate academic excellence in 5 disciplines. So there was art, literature, history, I believe. You look it up, you'll find it. And nowadays it's where the immortels, who are the immortal writers of France, still get dressed up in fancy green suits with a sword. But then their first woman a few decades ago, and she has to wear a green skirt and a sword. And they determine what is appropriate in the French language. There's actually a kind of a French language police. What words are acceptable and what aren't. Of course, they fight all the Anglicisms and try and find suitable French replacements for the English words that just invade their language, but it's very difficult to do that. Coming up to the Musée d'Orsay, just past the Cour des Comptes, which is the national accounting body, and the place where the state investments are decided. And here's the Musée d'Orsay. This used to be the train station, a suburban train station. You can see in the sculptures on the front the names of all the towns, the provincial towns that were served. And it is now one of the most extraordinary museums, I was going to say in Paris, but actually in the world. Mostly 19th century, lots of impressionists, fantastic collections of classic art, well worth a visit. But again, beware of the crowds. These places can get packed very quickly, and you have to avoid the days of affluence because it's just not worth it, just too much hassle. Even if they do try to time and limit the entrance, the amount of people coming in. More classical buildings. We're now looking at the left bank, so the south bank. Famously the quarter of intellectuals, of religions and of government, but also of very exclusive residential property.
I wanted them to learn English.
More unique apartments. The bizarre one on the top with a kind of a radar on top. I've heard lots of theories about how it lives there. You can see in the distance the Eiffel Tower. We're coming back around the bend. And that Neo-Grecian temple-looking building is actually the French Parliament. And you can visit it, although I think only at certain hours. And you can actually listen to some of the debates live. There it is on the left. Past the French Parliament, we've come to more governmental buildings. So one of the most famous ones is the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, with extraordinary reception rooms that are worth looking at. You can see them from the road with high ceilings, glass chandeliers, monumental art on the walls. Nice place to have a cocktail party. These riverbanks used to be motorways, fast tracking cars through the city, and they fortunately converted them into promenades. So it makes the whole city visitable in a really nice way, either on foot or perhaps on bikes if you want. Here we're back at the Pont de l'Alma where we almost started, and the new Russian cathedral is just visible on the other side. There we go, those golden domes reflecting. Nobody knows why Putin, well, he knows what lurks inside that Russian complex. Coming back up to the Eiffel Tower, we're coming up to the left bank's most graceful buildings, and another museum inaugurated by President Chirac, the Musée du Quai Branly, with lots of artifacts from Asia and the Pacific Ocean, or Latin America too, I believe. on the left some unusual tower blocks, unusual for Paris because there are only 4 neighborhoods in the city where they're allowed to build above the regular. Normally, buildings are limited to 6 floors, and that's one of the reasons why Paris is so beautiful, because of the regularity of building heights as well as of building styles. But there's 4 neighborhoods where there were an exception to this. They were opened in the mid-70s. It was part of France's drive to modernism. And these high-rise buildings reach up 100 meters to 32 floors. And because there are so few of them, they have extraordinary views from the top, across the rooftops of the whole city, across the parks and across the river. So this set of high-rises is called Bourg-Grenelle. There's a revamped shopping centre, which has become, I think, the most shopping centre in the whole Paris region. For those who are into shopping malls, we're navigating past a little island, which is a useful stroll down the river from Bourg-Grenelle. It's called the Île aux Cygnes Swan Island, although I've never seen a swan come near it. And over at the end of this island is another replica of, but this time of the whole Statue of Liberty. Again, so it's a much smaller replica of the real thing. I'm not sure whether the French did it themselves and kept it when they gave the original to New York, or whether it's a gift back from the States. But it's a funny little reminder of the fact that the Statue of Liberty actually came from Paris. And these statues were designed to be guarding the entrance, I think, to an opera or to a concert hall. And its eventual use and symbolism became much more lofty than its original purely decorative intent.
fermeture. Ladies and gentlemen, if you still need to use the toilets, there are only 5 minutes left.
Okay, we're about to take our leave and we're coming up past one of the most interesting bridges in Paris. It's interesting because you can see it's on 2 layers. The bottom layer is for traffic, the top layer is for the metro. And whether you're in the metro or walking past, it's a great spot to view the Eiffel Tower and the river and the monuments of Paris in the distance. So well worth a visit. This bridge is featured in many more films than one can imagine. So that concludes our boat trip. Again, when you take one of these, try and make sure, particularly if the river is high, you get one of the smaller boats. So you can get right through to the end, the east end of the Paris tour. And thanks for joining us, and see you next time.
Avec la tour Eiffel, qui a été réalisée pour l'exposition universelle de 1889 par l'ingénieur Gustave Eiffel. Construite en seulement 2 ans, 2 mois et 5 jours, cette tour de 300 mètres de haut possédait alors 1710 marches pour atteindre le sommet au 3e étage. Aujourd'hui, la tour Eiffel mesure 330 mètres de haut grâce à l'antenne qui la surplombe. Il faut savoir en effet que la tour n'était construite à l'origine que pour 20 ans. Elle aurait donc dû être démolie en 1909. Très vite conscient de la nécessité de lui trouver une utilité, Gustave Eiffel y a effectué de nombreuses expériences scientifiques et c'est finalement son utilisation comme antenne permettant la